Right, okay. By the way, that side of the room is louder, so next time I ask for a response and let's keep up. My name is Inayat Amindala, and I'm the Executive Director of Community Learning Network. Welcome to TULIP. I got up a flower last week, a tulip, and I wanted to sort of water it over the weekend and bring it here so that I'm more in line with the theme of the event. But I forgot to water it, and the flower died on me, so I'm not wearing that. So I am sort of mourning as well, so if you see me rather struggling here, please bear with me. From Calgary, so I had a day full of activities and running. I probably lost a few pounds. And I've been starting to lose that for the past little while, but this weekend certainly did me well. So I hope you had some value from your weekend too. I'll tell you a little bit about Community Learning Network. And if you don't know about us, well, you should, because we've been around for 25 years. Community Learning Network is a network of community-based learning organizations, and the clients are adult learners across Alberta, and our primary members include EB2 community adult learning councils across Alberta, serving over 250 communities. Our members also include colleges and other learning organizations that support foundational learning, as well as cultivate lifelong learning in the communities of Learning for Life. We operate on a collaborative model, preparing learners for both life and work. In your package, you do have some information about us, and I would encourage you to visit our website and learn more about the network and perhaps some opportunities for us to work, because, as I mentioned, we operate on a collaborative model, and we do work with the wider community, removing barriers to learning. This symposium is presented by Community Learning Network, but it would not have been possible without the collaboration, the partnership, and the support that we have had from the partners for this event. And I'd like to take a minute to recognize our partners for the event. Closer to Home initiative, managed by the Alberta Water Wastewater Association. Did I get the right number? It's a long one. And the funding is from RADF, Rural Alberta Development Fund. Of course, our partners here at Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, Elizabeth's team. We also have support from the Alberta Government, Ministry of Human Services. Dave, thank you. In the corner hiding somewhere. As we're going to this, I'm assuming he's here and he didn't leave. Okay, he's okay. Okay, good. I also wanted to acknowledge the collaboration with Edmonton Regional Immigrant Employment Council. Eric, did I get that right? Okay, good. Could I try to practice all these acronyms, but I don't always succeed. I also wanted to thank our volunteers who are not here, and I keep on our volunteers who you met at your registration, Mary, Amelia, and Logan with a nice tie, who's not in the room. He's a part-time employee, staff here at Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, but in the morning he has graciously agreed to volunteer at his time. So thank you, volunteers. And of course, I wanted to thank the staff and Elizabeth's team here at Edmonton Chamber of Commerce and the CLM staff to make sure that everything runs smoothly. So I hope the registration wasn't frustrating experience for you. Actually, let me hear it. How was the registration? Yeah? Okay. I'm just trying to wake you guys up with every clapping opportunity. All right, so I'm going to share with you some facts, and these facts may not be so new to you. For some of you, it'll be new, but it's important as we talk about setting the context for what the day is going to offer, and I'm so excited to hear the presentations and the perspectives on today's topic. Because what we're trying to do here is build capacity within the sector, build capacity within our workforce, build capacity within the Albertans and the community so that we're better able to be good providers, sufficient providers for our family, productive, taking the development agenda forward in whatever capacity that we are involved in. So absolutely a very relevant topic for us today. And so I'll give you some did you knows. 46% of employed Alberta workers are in literacy skill shortage. 46%. 18 Alberta industries function with 50% or more of their employees with literacy levels below that demanded by their jobs at peak level. New Canadians face a 16% higher risk of being in skill shortage than their non-immigrant peers. 59% of immigrants in the experienced labor force are in skill shortage compared to 43% of their non-immigrant peers. 44% of employed Aboriginal adults in Alberta are in skill shortage. Lucky you, I'll be your master of ceremonies for a portion of this morning. And I'd like to call upon our first speaker for this morning, Mr. Lindsay Dodd, the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce Chair of the Board.
All right, can you hear me out there? Yes? That's back? Awesome. I'll keep my remarks brief. There's much smarter people waiting to get up here and share some thoughts. So, but I wanted to welcome you on behalf of the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce. It's nearly 3,000 business members for joining us here on our, we're really proud of this building. So joining us here today, we really appreciate it. But more importantly, we appreciate the work that you do and the value that you bring to our great province. I was put in place as chair of the board just a few weeks ago, and so it's a real pleasure to be here with you guys today. I just want to give you a little history of the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce and what workforce means to us. Back in 2005, the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce identified the #1 issue for our members was workforce. They could not get the staff they needed to operate their businesses. That was in 2005. So we created at that point an initiative called Workforce Development Edmonton and started to work with various groups on how to build more capacity in Alberta's workforce. Initially, we started providing services to those with disabilities who needed work and connecting them with employers. Since then, we've actually created a workforce task force to address this issue and build some policy around these issues. Last year, that task force was actually chaired by Norma Schneider from Northwest, so thanks to her and her team, they put in place some great policies I'll talk about in a minute. But now they've refocused their attention away just from persons with disabilities, but looking at immigrants, Aboriginal communities, youth, older workers. There's an estimate out of the Alberta government saying that there could be up to 114,000 workers required by 2019. 114,000 people. That's a city the size of Red Deer that we need into Alberta to keep our economy humming the way it's been humming up to this point. So we've got another labor shortage, a dire need for skilled workers to be sure, but there is a dire need for all workers. And the unskilled workers are in great demand as well. Certainly with the rising tide of the economy, lots of opportunities out there, creates a need across the board. I'll tell you a little story. One of the owners of the Tim Hortons in Nisku, the only way he can keep workers is if he brings them in from outside. So he's largely populated his Tim Hortons with Filipino workers. The reason is if he has somebody who's not a Filipino worker in his drive-through, the very morning they start work, they will receive a card from somebody getting their double-double saying, I'll double your salary tomorrow, come work for me. That's the labor demand in Nisku. So it is at all levels, skilled and unskilled, where we need good people. That task force has created a few policies that we've taken to the Alberta Chamber of Commerce, which has received support, and we've also taken them to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And in fact, the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce was in Ottawa last November meeting with Jason Kenney, our Minister of Immigration, to talk about some of his projects, some of the work that he's doing. But we put forward some really important policy that's now getting pushed through at the federal level. We've asked for additional spaces for international students at our post-secondary institutions. We want more spaces for good people to come to Canada to learn. We've asked for these international students to be allowed to work longer in Canada once they graduate. It is absolutely crazy that we train somebody here and then kick them out of the country to go work somewhere else. It's just crazy. So we've gone to the federal government and asked them to allow them to stay longer. We've also asked them to create a priority for international students, students that have dedicated themselves to come and learn in Canada, that they be given priority in terms of their permanent residency. We've also asked for non-resident employers to have an easier time to bring in non-resident employees, skilled workers into Canada. So those are some of the things that the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce was working on. I bet you had no idea, right? So today's symposium, great importance for us. So I thank you all for your participation. Education, training, and engagement of the workforce is our #1 priority. The Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, we continue to look forward to working with practitioners, service providers, and the community to provide the workforce that this city needs. This will improve our economy, will improve the health and quality of life for our workforce participants. So I know that the tools being discussed here today will help create the best environment for learning, which for us creates the best environment for business, something the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce tries to do every single day. So I thank you, and I welcome you, and have a great day at the symposium.
Lindsay, thank you very much. After Lindsay spoke, I think I got somewhat of a better energy now. Am I louder? Louder? Yes. Lindsay, Michael has promised that he's going to look into buying a membership. So
awesome. At least one more membership. I already volunteered to help with the workforce task force, and I'm not even a member yet.
Dedication. In your package, I wanted to sort of go over it to make sure that you know what's in there if you haven't had a chance to open it. We have bios of all the speakers, which is why we're not reading the full bio of the speakers and speakers. I hope that's okay. And we also have copies of the presentation of all the sessions. So even if you're attending the 2 sessions, you'll have copies of the other 2 sessions as well, so you know what's being discussed. And we also have a lovely DVD, and it's exploring careers in water and wastewater operations. Lovely CD, lots of useful content, lots to learn from there. And you have got an agenda which says that we're going to take an AM break at about 10:30, and then we have our lunch at 12:30. For those of you who have, it's a bit early to talk about lunch, but it's never too early to talk about food, is there? So we have vegetarian but it's great food. And for those of you who have dietary restrictions, we have the staff on site, and we would like you to identify yourself to the staff to make sure that we get the meals, the right meals to you, as they may not be displayed at the buffet. At this point, I'd like to call upon Mr. Michael Ahern, who is the Consulting Principal of Responsive Strategies and Executive Advisor of Workforce Development, Alberta Water and Wastewater Operators Association. Michael.
Good morning, and I'm just going to put my little fancy phone out here, because what I will likely do is take my comments and sync them with my slides and put them on the internet for you. I'm not promising that immediately, but I will likely do that. So again, good morning, and this is a double pleasure for me. I have the opportunity to follow Lindsay, who is a classmate of mine from the University of Alberta Business School, and who no doubt is providing important workforce leadership through the Chamber. It's also a bit of a homecoming for me as it pertains to the CLN and the Community Adult Learning Councils. And Carl told me that there's about 30 council-related registrants today. And if you're from a Community Adult Learning Council, I wonder if you could just put up your hand for a moment. Yeah. And what I want to say here is that about 20 years ago, I first became aware of the councils. I had a newly minted master's degree in adult education, and I had an opportunity to work with many of what we would call probably early adopter councils on some of the very earliest internet access projects in rural Alberta. And I'd also say that in the interview, this is a bit of a commercial for what's coming from Doug Horner later this afternoon, by the way. In the intervening years, I've actually had a chance to work across the country in all 13 provinces and territories. And what I wanted to say to you is that nowhere else in Canada have I ever seen the capacity for province-wide for the interagency community adult learning and capacity work that you do. And I hope again that for those of us who've been to this movie before in the 1990s, especially, that as we're challenged to do more with the same in this province, that and sometimes maybe possibly do more with less, that that we continue to look to your councils locally in the communities, all 81 of them, for the value that they bring. They bring tremendous value for money. Okay, so we can have the first slide, please, Lisa. So why are we here today? Well, as I had already said, because literacy and essential skills matter more today than perhaps ever before. And as citizens, we live in a time where it's really difficult to function in a society if you don't possess certain core capabilities. And literacy and essential skills, as you all very well know, figure prominently as a gateway to opportunity and quality of life. And I think I would take one exception with what Lindsay did say. I'm not entirely certain anymore there's such a thing as an unskilled worker. I think it's that there's various levels of skills in the range from across the board, so I'd like to just share my own view of that. As citizens, we also rely on people who have essential skills for providing essential services, and really that will, as we go through, I'll be touching on some of these little photographs that appear on the slides of water and wastewater operations. So that could be somebody like you'll see in the top picture, and these slides, by the way, are also in, if you're taking notes, they're in your package. The slide at the top is the town foreman of Penhold, and she's busy taking a meter reading, a daily meter reading at the groundwater well for the town of Penhold. The person in the center is a distribution systems operator in Okotoks, and he's actually taking a sample of the tap, the campground in Okotoks. And the person at the bottom at the time was a village operator of Champion, and he was actually doing some early screens after taking a sample from the drinking water plant there, and then making some entries and doing some preliminary tests before his water samples would go off to the Prob lab in Edmonton or Calgary. Now, as Albertans, as Lindsay said, as Albertans, we also produce many specialty items for global market as well as energy resources. And a few years back, I actually had a chance to work with employers in the energy sector, and they had a praise for things that weren't produced to specification. And that resulted in service failure, rework, that sort of thing. And they called it the cost of non-conformance. That's actually a good phrase to write down, the cost of non-conformance. And it can be incredibly expensive, as you might imagine, in this province, given some of the dollar figures involved in what we do. And I discovered that much of the root cause for non-conformance in this province is because people lack literacy and essential skills, as well as other things such as what Lindsay was mentioning. We have a lot of people, not enough people sometimes doing too much and for too long, and they make mistakes. So reducing the cost of non-conformance is actually one of the measures that some people in the energy sector in particular use when they're reflecting on return on training investment. So maintaining quality of life, quality of essential services we all rely on, and whether that's turning on the tap or having somebody, not necessarily a registered nurse, come into your healthcare facility and administer medications at the bedside for somebody who is vulnerable. It all matters. And literacy and essential skills are that foundation. And you know, I really feel, given this here, I'm reading you back your own mail, like a consultant. And you know, literacy and essential skills, we do recognize that they're the building blocks for safe, reliable services and workplaces that can compete with the world. And so, since you already know this, really, what I would simply say is that this is in part a statement to celebrate that and the work that so many of you do. So, just as a reminder, and I guess Lisa, I'd ask for the next slide. So what is literacy and essential skills? Well, like most things in this country, if you want to spend money on it, you better have some boundaries and frame it and label it. And so what we have here, and I stand to be corrected, there's people who know a lot more about this than I do sitting in the room. I believe for about 20 years we've actually had what are considered 9 categories for literacy and 5 essential skills. So under literacy, reading, writing, document use, numeracy, and essential skills, computer use, thinking, oral communication, working with others, and continuous learning. I'd like to take just a few seconds here to talk about the two gentlemen in this slide, and I think that must be John over there, right? Yeah, I saw you smiling at Shannon and do you remember the fellow from Sturgeon Lake? What's his first name? That's Elder Foods. Thank you. Okay, so in this picture, what we have is a gentleman who, at the time, was what is called a circuit rider trainer. And I mentioned John Nelson over there. John Nelson, and is that Dan beside you? Don? Sorry, hi Don, nice to meet you. Don and John are from the First Nations Technical Services Advisory Group. And they're a group that deals with fire and infrastructure and water and wastewater and probably a lot of built environment for First Nations in Alberta. And in this particular set of pictures, what we have is we have a circuit rider who is actually received his initial training as a water operator with the MD of Opportunity. He resides in Wabasca. and he's actually up at the fish in these pictures. He's actually up at the Sturgeon Lake First Nation, just northwest of Valley View, and he's actually working as a part-time mentor, part-time troubleshooter, and I would also say joint guardian of safe water with the First Nations. Would that be, John, would you say that's a fair characterization of what circuit riders do? Okay, so what you can see in these pictures is that people in our communities are needing to take readings, do various things that we otherwise take for granted. And, next slide, please. So why is literacy and essential skills important today? We live in a time where there's a lot of emphasis placed on the practical, and that's on doing. Now, follow me along here for a second, please. So doing is about know-how generally, but in order to get to the know-how, you typically need to do the know-what, okay? And be that concepts of design, of operation, principles, practices, roles, responsibilities. And we also live in an age here where there's a bit of a contradiction. So today, as we value the know-how, what we tend to undervalue is the know-what. And it's precisely that the know-what that helps with the know-how and literacy and essential skills enable the know-what and make the know-how possible. So we need to keep that in mind, because actually one of the things that many of you will also see, I'm sure, is that you have many employers who on one hand are kind of crying the blues about they can't get the right people with the right skills in the right place at the right time. However, they're also reticent to invest in apprenticeships and things like that. And they expect people to show up and be work ready. Well, it doesn't happen that way, and we need to be sensible about that. Now, this isn't all about work. We want to be really clear about that. Essential skills are for living, and if you think about it, in the course of a century, we've actually gone from very short lives, characterized by short deaths, or short periods of time, typically through trauma or infection, so farming accident or tuberculosis or some other infection, to very long lives, comparatively speaking, unprecedented in humanity, and characterized by longer periods of decline and often multiple chronic conditions. And so over those long lives, more so than ever, we're challenged to learn, unlearn, and relearn, and as well as look after ourselves and each other in ways that we never have had before. It is unprecedented. And then also, if you think about it, in the what we're now calling the post-Great Recession, after 2008, there's been tremendous investments of dollars in technology and productivity in our workplaces, and there's more emphasis on getting things done quicker, better, faster the first time, and more pressure to do it right the first time. And so the other thing that we're constantly faced with in our workplaces is this sort of sometimes not subtle message that if you can't do it quick and fast and right the first time, chances are somebody else in the global marketplace will. And so as we renew our workforces, the other thing we need to be reminded about, especially in essential services or spaces that are regulated, is that more so than even a generation ago, we have extensive regulation. The use of technology is embedded in many things we do. And the scrutiny of Web 2.0 is among us. And so we're always in the public eye. And what I'm reminded of was last fall, Sylvia and Ian Tyson were being interviewed by John Gomeshi on, oh, sorry, did I ever miss that one? Gian Gomeshi on Q. And they were recounting when they got started, and they talked about a time where you could make it up as you go along, where there was some tradition in the culture to make mistakes, and you could be inventive. And I believe that time was called the late 1960s. And what Sylvia Tyson herself observed is that today that culture doesn't tolerate mistakes. It's go straight to failure. And there's a lot of examples where we can see that mistakes are high. So in this slide, what I'd like to point out to you, so this slide, the pictures were taken at the Henry Kruger Regional Water Plant at Hanna, Alberta. And the fellow in the top, his name is Gord, and Gord is doing some things with the SCADA system, which is a supervisory control and data acquisition system. About 25 years ago, Gord was a person who worked on CN Rail. At the time, CN closed the Roundhouse in Hanna, and he was out of a job. He needed a long time to learn his trade and to incorporate these new technologies. The young woman who's actually in the middle picture and in the bottom picture, her name's Jenna. In 2009-2010, she actually entered a one-time pilot program made available through Water for Life, where she actually could enter the water industry directly from high school and stay in Hanna. But her learning curve is much, much higher, and there's much more scrutiny about what she does, when she does it, how she does it, and much less tolerance for mistakes. Okay. So the only other thing I'd just say about the bottom slide, or the bottom bullet, so that we can move on here, is I make reference to self-efficacy here. And this is based on the work of some of the, that you may have heard of, a fellow named Albert Bandura, B-A-N-D-U-R-A. Suggest that you might want to look him up. He's a preeminent social scientist, and for those of you from the Mundare area, he actually died in 2010, and one of the great social scientists of our time, I learned, was born during the Depression in Mundare. And he spent most of his career at Stanford. For some of you of a certain vintage, you might remember in the United States in the early 1970s, there was some congressional hearings about TV violence. And you might remember there was the whole Bobo the Clown. Well, Bandura was the Bobo the Clown guy. Okay, so next slide, please. Some challenges. So knowing where to get started with learning the essential skills, accountability and defensibility and use of the tools, application of the tools in everyday use. So who's using these tools, how are they using them, and sensible use of the tools. And one of the things you'll learn today is here's one source of trusted information, or a trusted source of trusted information that you can use in identifying the tools. And consider the possibility that more is required for you today in the use of literacy essential skills. And I recognize that you're being asked to do a lot that maybe you didn't sign up for as workplace learning professionals, and we're all on this journey of learning more together. Okay, so the thing I'd just like to point out, especially for the settlement folks here with this, but for everybody, I think, this fellow's name is George. He works in a wastewater treatment plant in a large city that is not in Alberta. And when we were, and I would just like to thank Dave over there, because several of these, Dave Manchuk from Alberta Human Services, because these pictures and these anecdotes that I'm sharing with you, they were made available by a contribution from Alberta Human Services in the workforce attraction package that's in your DVD that's in your package. Now, George came from Colombia, and when we sat down to talk with him, he actually did a really nice interview with us, and at the end we had this open question, kind of a catch-all question that we were doing during these semi-structured interviews. And I had to listen twice. I was with a professional interviewer, and George said that he came from Colombia, and that he came as a refugee to Canada because his wife's family was murdered. And they were murdered for the agricultural land that they held because it was to be put into production for coca. And he was talking about some of the challenges. So he was working at that time as a kind of a part-time wastewater plant operator. And he shared with us some of the stories, no doubt, that you hear about people who come here all the time. And at the end, though, he pulled out a binder, pulled out this big binder, and says, "You asked me to bring some pictures to show what I do outside of work," and I did. And we said, "Okay." And he actually started to pull out these pictures, and you'll see in the bottom there's one of these pictures that he's agreed to share with us. And you'll see more in the wastewater treatment operator segment on that DVD. It turns out that George is a rock star relief operator with Oxfam UK and had been for many years. And he was being treated very poorly in his Canadian workplace. And yet this guy pulled out this binder and he was showing us pictures of working on the border of Iraq. And this picture was taken right after a relief mission in the 2010 Haiti earthquake. And he had many, many more pictures and many, many more stories from other parts of the world. And so for me, that was a good reminder, if you will, in this instance, never judge a book by its dust cover. There's always something deeper there. Okay, so I think Carl is probably getting a little twitchy there because I've gone over the time that I was budgeted by almost double. And I recognize that. But it never worked this way in the rehearsal, Carl, wherever you are. So just in terms of setting the stage for today, getting started, please recognize you will not be an expert after today in using literacy and essential skills. But if I can use this HRGC graphic, this will help you get started today. It will help you to get informed and build some awareness, possibly build some networks, and get some introduction to some tools. And you should be, at the end of today, able to map out a bit of an action plan and be confident that you have some new information, some new contacts, some new compatriots, if you will, on the journey to using these literacy and essential skills tools, as well as the information and productivity tools that we'll hear about in the panel and in the breakout sessions and more. All right, so I feel very privileged to be here today. I feel very privileged to that we're able to do this with the Community Learning Network. And I'd really like to thank the team at the Community Learning Network for the vision in bringing this event to just even thinking about it and then having the skills to execute it. It's just delightful. I'm not so sure the fire marshals would necessarily agree, but it's really remarkable that we were able to have all of you here today and hope that you learned something from it. Okay, thank you. And I believe I'm going to ask Doug to come up next.
Good morning, everyone. Oh,
Yeah, no.
yeah, how are you?
We're both excited to see. I have a couple of housekeeping items which I should mention as I was tasked with this. And these are serious, so unlike the Air Canada flight attendants matters that you ignore, you actually have to pay attention to these. So these are important. Michael, thank you for the presentation, and I'm always impressed with your anecdotal references, with all the general knowledge that you have, all these people names that you pulled out of the audience and the people that you know. So, thank you for that. Thank you. So the emergency exits. For the planning session, we're all in this one big room. So there's two exits. For the emergency exit, please use the stairs in case of fire or any sort of emergency that may happen. Fingers crossed nothing will happen because we are to the max here. And the washrooms, and I know some of us might be ready for those. So behind me by the elevators, on the right side of the elevators, there are washrooms for both male and female, so you don't have to line up for one washroom. You guys might be wondering why I'm wearing two name tags. And it's because I have a very hard name. So if you miss one and you can't read, hopefully you can read the other one. Okay. I need to speak up because we have live audience as well. Since you can't wave to the live audience, how about we all say hello? Hello, live audience. And I think there is about 30 registrants online or so.
We've got about 18 online.
18 online. The rest forgot about it. Okay, just to make sure that I don't forget anything. So one of the things that I want to mention that's related to the online folks, Stephanie Walker is at the CLN office. If you have any technical difficulties, please call her at 780-485-4926. And she'll be in touch with the technical staff here to make sure that we can fix any technical problems that may occur, and hopefully there won't be any, because it is the first time that we're actually trying sort of live audiences as well for this kind of event. So we're quite excited and nervous, but we're more excited. So, you know, I have some bad news. My time with you on the podium is coming to an end. So I know you're all very sad, but we have done an extensive search in securing the next speaker who will do even a better job than me. So at this point, I'd like to welcome Doug Pickett.
I don't know about extensive. I was available. Welcome everybody to this very unique gathering of practitioners, and I was just listening to, of course, Lindsay and Michael, and there's really interesting connections for me with regards to the themes of today's conference. And I certainly, Lindsay mentioned about the Workforce Task Force. I'm a member of the Workforce Task Force as well, and it's been a really rewarding experience for us. Looking at trying to make some policy change, especially in my area of interest, which is with skilled immigrants. And of course, I kind of started the community learning network, and I didn't realize I'd been out of the country for a few years, and I didn't know what the community learning network was until and I discussed it, and I attended one of its annual meetings, and I was actually part of the former Further Education Councils. Many years ago, I was the chair in La Claviche, and it was a great, as Michael has mentioned, these are incredible resources for small communities, rural communities, and certainly going forward, I think it holds a lot of promise for us in the future, having that kind of intentional kind of work that's going on in regarding essential skills and adult education. So I have the privilege today of being both a presenter and a moderator. So again, and it was his extensive search led to me trying to be a little bit more expansive in terms of what I can provide to you today. So I'm going to start off giving you a little bit of a presentation on our career mentorship program, a little bit about the Edmonton Region Immigrant Employment Council, which I'm the executive director, but more specifically on the career mentorship program. So, and I'm also functioning as the technical director for my own presentation.
Just outsource it to research.
So, who is Eric, and how did it come to be? Actually, there's a number of, and I always call them, and maybe I hope that people don't take offense to this, but I think it's a great honor, there's many midwives here in the room, and I think I see Karen Link over there, and many others that were involved with the birth of this excellent program. For those of you who don't know, Immigrant Employment Councils are in existence right across Canada from Halifax to Vancouver. And we have 2 here in Alberta, 1 here in Edmonton, and 1 in Calgary. So the Edmonton Region Immigrant Employment Council is an industry-led not-for-profit dedicated to ensuring that newcomers to Edmonton are welcomed and participate in the local economy and the level of their full potential. That is basically what we use as our guiding vision statement, but how we operate is we use mentorship as a sort of kernel, as a touchstone to the work that we do. Oops. I think this is working. I may have. So maybe I'll. So I'm just going to throw a question out to you, and this is part of my professional background is also community economic development, certainly participatory planning and participatory processes. So I'd like to throw it out a little bit out to you.
There's a gremlin. There must be an animation in that other slide. Oh. It keeps advancing.
Yeah. If you don't talk fast enough.
I think Carl has something to do with it.
Carl. So I'm just going to throw this out to you. Why is it important to integrate foreign trained professionals into the local economy? And please, just anybody, why would it be important for us to do this?
To meet industry needs.
To meet industry needs. Yes.
Bring them to the point where they are able to work to their potential, which benefits the economy and companies become economically established.
So working to their potential and basically being a contributor to the economy. Yeah, those are excellent. And basically, you know, one of the things about the ERIC project was that this is a business case approach, as opposed to, this isn't about charity. I mean, obviously at the end of the day, we want people to be working at their potential, and that's a social case. But we also, because we're an industry-led organization, what we want is that employers have the best people working for them and contribute to them. And having an international and diverse workforce is really important and provides a different perspective and a different contribution to the work team. So how does ERIC help support foreign trained professionals? Well, one of the ways we do that is through what we call our career mentorship program, which has been in existence now for about 3.5 years. And we have been very successful at bringing on both mentors who are volunteers from the business community to work with skilled professionals who come to us from outside of Canada. So before I continue on, it needs to be defined a little bit as to what mentorship means. Everybody has kind of perhaps a mentorship experience. Can define mentorship in many different ways, but how we define it at ERIC is through these following bullet points: a reciprocal learning process. So one of the things that we notice with this kind of thing is that employers get a chance to meet people from other countries. And I guess the assumption is that our employers know more than the mentees or the employees. And that's not necessarily the case, and that's why I think the operative word here is reciprocal. Yes, people coming to Edmonton need some knowledge in order to adapt, to integrate a lot quicker. But one of the things that we get in terms of feedback from all our surveys is that sometimes the mentors say, I think I learned more from the mentees than I actually gave them, which is really an interesting epiphany. So it is reciprocal, so it goes 2 ways. So the sharing of knowledge and information or experiences between a more experienced person and a less experienced person. But again, it goes both ways. So one of the things that we like to hear is that mentors get a better sense of the journey for newcomers who come to the city. Because a lot of times our mentors will say, oh, won't be a problem. I'm so networked, I can get this person a job right away. And then what ends up happening is that they discover it's not quite so easy. And I think that epiphany for employers is really important so that they have a better understanding, a better sense of empathy
for what it's like to make the journey to come here to Canada. And the last is to facilitate the achievement of certain life or career goals. So basically, it's a joint project between two individuals through a relationship. So career mentor, an experienced business professional. This is basically a character profile of what we're looking for when we're looking for mentors. She has his or her professional experience and insight, helps the mentee understand local employment practices and market conditions, and provides opportunities to help a mentee increase workplace skills, knowledge, and network. So this is informal learning. This is there's a structure behind it. We do have a manual that goes along with that relationship. But essentially, what we're trying to do is create a space where dialogue can occur. And we do have some prompts and some sort of objectives in that relationship. Where for the most part, what we're trying to do is just provide somebody the possibility to ask the questions that they don't get a chance to ask sometimes. And for a lot of people who are facing barriers when they come to Canada, they're not sure, and they're not sure who they can talk to. So having a mentor is a safe place for them to have that dialogue. A lot of people think that, well, I can't be a mentor. The stereotype is that you got to have gray hair or no hair, and that you're wise, but for the most part, a lot of people who have direct Canadian workplace experience, and you could be in your early 20s or mid-20s or late 30s or whatever, it doesn't matter about age and what color of your hair is or how much hair you have. It's basically an interest to provide that knowledge and share it, because sometimes it's just your experience that you're sharing with those folks that may be the trigger to the next step for them in their career path. The career mentee is a skilled, job-ready professional and who wants to work with an experienced business person, and who wants to gain knowledge about the Canadian workplace culture and practices, and wants to be introduced to professional networks. So one of the things that we see a lot, and yet sometimes the skilled newcomer comes to Canada and they need a job. That's the golden ring. But through mentorship, it's more, I consider, sort of an insurance policy, because we've seen lots of people come through our program and maybe get halfway through and maybe drop out because they've got a job. But unfortunately, sometimes they don't keep their job, and that's because they're not quite ready yet. They were hired based on their technical abilities, but they still don't have those integrative skills. And sometimes those cues, you just can't learn from a book. You need to have somebody share that with you. So the Career Mentorship Program connects job-ready professionals. Connects job-ready professional members to the global talent pool with an experienced business counterpart in the same profession. These are some of the goals of our program: occupation-specific, facilitated, one-on-one, 24 hours over 4 months. And the focus is on understanding Canadian workplace culture, enhancing their professional development, increased confidence, self-marketing techniques, goal settings, and career development objectives. So these are the kinds of things that will basically transpire through that mentoring relationship. And like I said, it's usually done within the scope of a facilitated manual. And we also have a great partnership with Northwest College through their Center of Excellence in Intercultural Education. And I believe we're the only ones in the country that has actually incorporated these kinds of workshops into our, I think there are variations on it, but in each cohort that we run, we actually have 4 sessions. So once a month, the mentors and mentees meet at Northwest College and go through basically a sort of kind of an academic understanding of what the intercultural adjustments are, or some of the differences are, and getting a better sense of that whole journey. Because a lot of people, it's a bit of a mystery why we can't gel or can't integrate. And so Northwest College does an excellent job, and they have a great team that basically facilitates that learning between the mentors and mentees. And that also becomes a discussion point or a debriefing after each session in the mentoring relationship, so they can get a chance to discuss that and share some of their feelings about some of the points that were brought up in those workshops. supports that we provide by Eric is orientation with the mentors and mentees, learning workshops with Marcos, as I mentioned, support materials, so that would be the manual and of course some of the extra. We provide flash drives as well that include the manual, as well as some interesting sort of provocative articles that can get dialogue started between the mentor and mentee. And then a partnership agreement, which basically says that this is a formalized relationship, so that an agreement is made right from the beginning as to what we want to accomplish, both the mentor and the mentees, and that's shared between the two. So just quickly, and I'm trying to be considerate of time here, so we get 10:30 is already a break. Mentee eligibility, so we're looking for people who are permanent residents or landed immigrants, are unemployed or underemployed. We've been accepting more, considering the economy that we're in right now, more people who are still working in their survivor jobs, working during the day, as long as they can indicate to us that they are available to sort of maintain that mentoring relationship, then we usually allow them to stay in. But it makes it really difficult because you do have to be flexible to both parties, with the mentee to the mentor and mentor to the mentee. They must have a job-ready resume, have a minimum of a bachelor's degree or equivalent in post-secondary education obtained outside of Canada, and have at least 3 years work experience outside of Canada. Maybe we usually accept even up to 6 months, 7 months of experience here in Canada as well. Have completed an international qualifications assessment, have a Canadian language benchmark of 7 or higher, and can commit to the time for that relationship and towards successful networking and mentoring relationship. So a lot of people ask, well, why CLB 7s? Well, for the most part, we kind of experimented with some of those Canadian language benchmarks, but we've tried to go down to about a 6. And what we find is that people are still having some difficulties comprehending and having interactive dialogue. And so we don't want to set them up for failure. So we actually we ask them to go back either to, brush up on their language skills and then reapply. So, and we just find that we just don't want them to have another sort of failed experience, which is really tough on somebody. So it's hard for us to say no, but we say no conditionally. And because of the nature of the conference today, we have an online application process, so people can apply online. And for the most part, that's where we get most of our applicants are from online, plus working with the immigrant serving agencies here in the city. I think that's where everything ends. I did leave some feedback on there in terms of some of the responses from mentees who participated, but I'm going to move on because I'm very cognizant of time, and I'm not going to accept questions right away. But I would encourage you, if you have any questions about Eric or our career mentorship program, please see me during the conference today. I'll be available. And now I'd like to take on my other role, which is moderator, and begin that session. So can I ask all of the panel members to come up to the front? Susan, I had mentioned the bios. I won't be reading them. I was practicing them last night, and then I told me that I didn't have to do that. So, so I have been studying your photos, and it's another form of learning. And so I'm just going to do a brief introduction. I'll go through maybe quickly the introductions, and then we'll start maybe with Michael, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, I been introduced in here to actually do a bit of a summary at the end of the sessions.
And Michelle?
I'm Michelle Forrest, and I'm with the Connect Scales project.
Can you guys all hear? I know it's
Tonight's going to pass the mic.
that might be better.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Forrest, and I work with Connect Strategic Alliances on the Scales project.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Basedale. I work with the Intercultural Education Center at Northwest, and I'm going to be talking about roots and connections.
Good morning, my name is Kathy Tighe, and I'm with Enterprise and Advanced Education, and I'm here to talk about ALICE today. Good morning, my name is Diane Hurry, and I'm from Bow Valley College, and I'm here today to talk about the financial literacy toolbox that we have.
Okay, and just prior to starting this session, I'm just going to set the rules of conduct in terms of how we're going to operate this session. I know that some of you have participated in the online survey regarding some of the expectations for today's session, and we know that there's a lot of questions and a lot of interested people in some of the work that's being done here, certainly, but there was some of the feedback that was a little bit outside of the session theme. So what I would like to do is I want to capture that as well. So if there are questions that aren't answered today at the table in terms of the presentations you hear, please write them down on a piece of paper, and I would recommend that you get them to Carl or to Carl's staff, and then we would endeavor to respond to some of those questions that, again, fall outside of the theme of this session. So, Diane, I think if you would like, we can start off with you in terms of the presentations. We will hopefully have some time for some questions at the end of all of the presentations, so we'll allow all of the presentations to be heard, and then we'll call for questions.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. I work in the English language learning area at Bow Valley College, and we are one of the largest language or providers of English language instruction in Alberta. And our programming really works to support learners to foster language development, ESL literacy, as well as essential skills development. We address the needs of learners across the entire continuum. So we have programs that support learners with interrupted formal education, and we also have responsive programs that support internationally educated professionals in the workplace. The vast majority of our learners are seeking to enter the workplace, and we really strive to ensure that the programs we develop will help them to build the essential skills necessary for the 21st century. Although the skill level and educational backgrounds of our learners vary quite considerably, we strongly feel that all of our learners will benefit from explicitly learning about financial literacy. A focus on financial literacy not only supports their language development, but it helps us to identify gaps in their literacy, as well as it helps us to enhance learners' essential skills development. So we focus on financial literacy to help learners who have really identified in their time with us that they are having challenges when it comes to financial literacy. So they've gone to their instructors and they've raised concerns to say that they receive letters in the mail, bills, they sign agreements, or they move into contracts that they don't fully understand. And because instructors are really a trusted community contact, we feel that it's important, because they trust us, that we need to make sure that we connect them to resources, information, and advice that's available to them in the community. So to support learners, we actually started to really investigate how we could better integrate financial literacy within our programming. And a lot of the research says that people who are struggling to make ends meet are young adults, very recent immigrants, in Canada within the last 5 years, low income or low net worth households. Those groups are also groups who are really struggling to plan ahead. And many of this audience, our audience is very diverse, but many of these groups are traditionally, or the people we serve, are traditionally at risk of poverty. So that includes immigrants, learners, single parents, and any of our learners, in our case, in the resource that we developed, they also have interrupted education. So what we found is, because of that, they have a range in their language skills, there's a range in their numeracy skills, and they've all had different life experiences that have shaped how they interpret financial literacy. So our goal is really to support them to become independent, to help them navigate systems, and by explicitly teaching transferable skills that can help them at home and work. So we developed a resource that's called the Financial Literacy Toolbox. And the aim of the toolbox is to provide practitioners in Alberta with resources and understanding that will enable them to support learners to be successful at work as well as in their community. It provides materials that help scaffold numeracy learning and recycle and practice mathematical vocabulary and skills. I think what's very unique about the toolbox is that it's really been very grassroots. It was designed by instructors in our program who were working with learners, or really the content was informed by the needs of the learners that we work with. This particular resource is piloted across the programs in our college, but there was a real focus on the programming that we do with immigrant youth. So immigrant youth with interrupted formal education, but also immigrant youth on the other side of the continuum who have less interrupted education and are actually seeking to move into the workforce. The Financial Literacy Toolbox is it's basically put into themes, and the way we've organized it is based on how practitioners would introduce financial literacy. So some of the topics we look at are really immediate needs, things that are quite personal. So we'll start with things like money, household expenditures, shopping, and then we move into things that are a bit more abstract, like budgeting, credit, debit, loans, savings, and we're currently developing 2 new units, one that's focused on work and the other that's focused on starting a business. The other thing that we've done with the toolbox is feedback really indicates that a lot of our instructors are very, they're quite comfortable with the language component, but the math and the financial literacy isn't necessarily what they were, it's not necessarily what they signed up for when they were coming into the program. So we've done a lot to support the numeracy development. We've tried to connect to other groups to support financial literacy development. And we started a community of practice, or an online community of practice, where practitioners can come together to talk about financial literacy, to talk about numeracy instruction, and then to find ways to make it meaningful in the Alberta context to connect learners to resources. And I will.
Great, thanks. And next up is Kathy today. Tidy. One put an accent on it.
I know, it's not that. It's not that.
And Kathy's going to talk to us a little bit about the Allies website.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I'll kind of explain my experience or my background with Alice. I've worked in enterprise and advanced education for the last 5 or 6 years. And in my role, I've been an outreach coordinator. So I coordinate a program that's focused on post-secondary planning. And it's called Learning Clicks. Some people may have heard about it before. It's kind of a peer-to-peer free program that we offer. And we go out to schools across Alberta, parents, mature learners, and we help them plan their post-secondary path. And one of the tools, actually our main tool that we use, is the Alice website in doing that. You have Eric, we have Alice. We like to personalize these websites, but it is a website. It stands for the Alberta Learning Information Services, and it's ALIS. I'm trying to think here what I can get through to be quick with you guys. It started in 1994, and what it is, it's a large comprehensive portal to career planning, education, and jobs in Alberta. I'm sure everybody's come across it at one point or another. It's had some facelifts over the last few years. A lot of that has been to help ease the navigation of it. I know it's a bit of a beast, if I can say that. It's pretty large. It's a tri-ministry website, so there are 3 different ministries that contribute to the content of the website, and that is Human Services, Alberta Education, and Enterprise and Advanced Ed. That being said, there's also some sub-sites on ALICE that are more like databases, and industry as well as the post-secondary institutions contribute to that information. And I'll go into that in more detail during my presentation this morning. Okay, so navigation. I touched on navigation. It can be daunting, a little bit cumbersome at first if you're not used to this site. There is a lot of information on it. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it was set up to be navigated in different ways. So I will go over that in more detail this morning. And hopefully, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that has this experience, you get to a page that has a lot of great information and you have no idea how to get back there. Has that ever happened to anybody on ALICE? So I will hopefully explain how ALICE is laid out and how you can find out where you are and how to get back to that information this morning. But what I'm also going to do, it's set up by the tabs at the top, by user tab. And so that's how it was set up to be navigated. And that's a great way to do it if you have the time. If you're going to explore, that's fantastic. But if you don't have the time, if you have an employee, a client, a student sitting in front of you that needs specific information, you need to get there quickly. So I'm going to introduce you to a number of marketing URLs on the website as well that get you to that information directly or to that topic. So I'll go over that. Oh, sorry, I haven't even talked into this, have I? A little bit. Okay, sorry. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, that's really it. So some examples, if you're not going to be in the presentation this morning, in the handouts that you have, the PowerPoints do go through those marketing URLs, so you will get that information, even if you are not in that presentation. But I think that's all I'm going to touch on right now. Hopefully by the time, if you do come to the presentation, by the time you leave, you'll have some tips and tricks on how to navigate ALICE and feel a little bit more comfortable with the website and how to get to topics right away. So that's the goal. And that's it.
So Sarah, you'll talk to us a little bit this morning about roots and connections.
Yes, that's right. So thank you very much. I'm going to talk about a resource called Roots and Connections that came out of a project called the ESL, the Rural ESL Enhancement Project. So it was conceived of in the context of the needs of small communities in Alberta. Many of those, well, some of those needs were because of a new influx, or a lot more different people coming into the community. So we say different in terms of larger cultural distances than the people who were already living in the communities. And because of not having specific settlement services, etc., the people in the literacy the community adult learning councils who are providing literacy were starting to provide ESL training as well, and then found themselves in the position of also offering settlement advice and helping people bridge the gap between where they were coming from and their new communities. And so Roots and Connections came out of that. And I just want to acknowledge that some of the contributors are curriculum writers, Wendy Eilert and Judy Carter are also here today. So this resource is quite a collaborative project with lots of community participating and helping us figure out what's going on. So I'd like to start just by referring to the contact hypothesis that many of you may have heard of. So the contact hypothesis says that groups from different cultures must be appropriately prepared to interact, and if they're not, then a reinforcement of stereotypes and prejudices is likely to occur. And in the case of, if we think of essential skills, or if we think of anything, prejudices and stereotypes is a response, an evaluative response that uses our cultural values to make sense of things. So when we are not prepared to interact, we just on autopilot use our cultural values and beliefs to make sense and to evaluate things. And so preparing people using intercultural communication skills in this case is a way to help get past that. So the Center for Intercultural Education at Northwest, our work is around that. We work in the classroom at Northwest, in the workplace and online and in communities. And really the focus, I would say, language and intercultural training is to support the integration of newcomers into Canadian communities and workplaces by providing innovative solutions that support both newcomers to Canada and Canadian-born or long-term Canadians. So at Northwest, similar to Bow Valley, the description of Bow Valley is it's a nice place for applied research projects like Roots and Connections because of the makeup of our student body. So we serve more than 1 million people in the Edmonton region and beyond with workforce relevant programs, and we seek to make those programs more and more inclusive, student-centered, and help learners with diverse educational backgrounds complete or further their studies, leading to post-secondary diplomas or certificate programs which offer career paths in health, community studies, and business, as well as a huge part of what we do in foundational programming, including academic upgrading, adult literacy, employment readiness, and English as an additional language. We also have 6 regional campuses as part of our stewardship role, and we provide programs and services in 23 communities, although I would guess it is actually more than that. It's not just within our stewardship region, but all over Alberta. And one of those ways that we do that is with our Rural Roots consultant team. And Roots and Connections is something that team has been very good at taking out and supporting communities to use the resource to its full potential. And the feedback that I've received is that it is being used and people are finding it accessible and useful, so that's great. So a little bit about the resource. In the session this afternoon, I'll talk more in detail, obviously, but I wanted to just introduce a context piece for you that I think is important to take away in terms of the real value of the resource for you here today. So one of the definitions that we've been playing with in the college recently is that inclusion equals diversity plus engagement. And we know that we're diverse, but inclusion means that our diversity is engaged. And so what does that mean? What does engagement look like? So Roots and Connections is an example of a resource that helps people to be engaged in those intercultural spaces. So the difference between a multicultural space and an intercultural space is really the engagement that's going on. So Roots and Connections does this by being a culturally integrated resource in which the content, the process, and the instructor supports are intentionally designed to meet survival language needs and develop intercultural sensitivity among all participants in the service of broader integration goals. Well, some people have commented when they first pick it up, they think, well, what's the difference between this and what is already available in, for example, LINK, the language instruction for newcomer resources? Well, the difference is that this resource is developed specifically with process and supports in mind, integrated in it to provide for quality teaching and learning opportunities in intercultural spaces, irregardless of the experience of the tutors or instructors. So in our small communities, the folks who step up to help support language learning don't always come from a background of language training and don't always have experience crossing cultures. And so we want the quality of the experience of learning language and teaching language to be satisfying for both the student and the instructor. So it meets the needs of 3 needs that it was developed for. It needed to be practical, easy to use, and to help orient newcomers to the community. So it is a community orientation resource. And as an extension of that, reduce isolation through English language development. So it's kind of addressing the people who are not in the LINK program, who might miss and might fall into a gap between other programming that's available, like LINK. It's also designed to, as you use it, to enhance the capacity of small community learning providers to offer culturally sensitive language programming and services. So it's built into it. So if you use it as it's designed, it integrates those things into it. It takes care of that. And the provider has the opportunity to learn along with the learner. It's two ways. And also to enhance outside of the classroom or the teacher-learner context, to enhance the capacity of communities as a whole through its design to welcome and include increasingly culturally diverse newcomers. So for you, I think that it has value on two levels. First, if this is something that you would need and would like to use, then it's ready to go. The other level is that it's a model of how to engage a subject area, so essential skills, for example, in an intercultural space with the goal of being participants being engaged in that space. So it does this by a model of having three roles. So not just the instructor role, but there's also a cultural bridge role and there's a community connector role. So the EAL instructor role is grounded in Canadian language benchmarks, so it reinforces and uses that framework. The community connector role is centered around theories of social capital building, and it builds in ways for current residents to play a role in helping newcomers build social capital. And then the cultural bridge role, which is the most related to the work that I do as an interculturalist, prepares people to anticipate. So that means using, recognizing cultural patterns and knowing where to expect gaps by being able to ask informed questions to find out about others' perspectives, and then to bridge cultural distance. And cultural distance is the degree of psychological adjustment that's needed to bridge the dissimilarities between one's cultural origin and the culture that you're entering into, and being able to absorb. So absorbing means helping learners name and normalize their experiences, and the experiences of transition and settling being potentially very disruptive and challenging. So this three-role model is transferable, I think, to other contexts as well, and especially the role of cultural bridge and intercultural communication constants that I would like to encourage this group to think of as perhaps the 10th essential skill. In the 9 essential skills listed, especially oral communication and thinking and working with others, those are deeply culturally shaped skills. So shaped in the sense that the way we evaluate somebody's efficacy with them or the way we translate them into action will be influenced by culture. And so having intercultural competence is going to be useful to have in this. I guess I'll just leave you with that thought of intercultural communication. If we are in a diverse space, in an intercultural space, then that's also an essential skill in terms of recognizing what people are bringing to the table. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And our final speaker is Michelle Forrest with the Connect Scales Project. And Michelle, did you fly in from Ontario?
Yes, I did. Yep, yesterday. And I'm flying out today, and I hear there is a storm brewing. So I may actually leave a bit early to get home, because I was in Vancouver during the last storm and got stuck there, which wasn't a hard thing to do, actually.
I'm getting stuck in Edmonton.
So what are you saying about that?
Yeah, that's right. Sorry about that.
Welcome to Edmonton, and hopefully you don't get stuck.
Actually, it's really nice here. I was here last week, and I was on White Avenue. It's really nice down there, too. Great place. So today I'm going to talk about the Connect Scales project. It is a essential skills project funded by HRSDC and OLIS, the Office of Literacy and Essential Skills. And I work for Connect Strategic Alliances at present, and that is the lead organization of this project. And we also partnered with Douglas College in British Columbia and Nova Scotia Community College in Nova Scotia. And the SCALES project stands for Supporting the Canadian Advancement of Literacy and Essential Skills. A lot of what I heard this morning is really resonating with me. I've had the good fortune over the past 3 years to go out and speak at national and provincial conferences, and I hear a lot of talk of these talent, needing to build talent, needing to recruit talent, needing to get the right talent or people with the right skills, and Canada's looming skill shortage. And when you drill down a little bit further and really hear what people are talking about, it really is the essential skills. And my definition that I go by and what our project has followed has been on HRSDC's definition of essential skills. So just to frame that for you is that's how our project has created tools that are, often using HRSDC's profiles in collaboration with our tools. But anyway, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. The SCALES project, the main mission was to help career practitioners to create, to have models and tools that they could use in their day-to-day work with their clients, learners, and to help career practitioners integrate those essential skills into their day-to-day work, to help career practitioners make effective referrals to other organizations, and to have essential skills as a common language that can be used when you're working with your client, working with other career practitioners, working with literacy practitioners and employers. So it's a common language that helps people build confidence and talk the same talk. So our project had 3 main phases. Phase 1 was the research, where we wanted to find out what do career practitioners know about essential skills, and we assumed that they knew quite a bit about essential skills, and then what essential skills tools and resources people are currently using, and then what are the gaps, what would they like to have that's missing right now, and we would fill that gap by creating tools. And what we found out is that career practitioners are struggling a bit with integrating essential skills, that it's not an easy task, and that they weren't really familiar with all of the different types of essential skills tools that are out there, and so therefore weren't really clear on what the gaps were. So we had to go back and regroup and figure out where we could start our research in a different way. So what we did was we decided that we would put out invitations in the 3 provinces where we had our partners, so Ontario, Nova Scotia, and British Columbia. And we would put out invitations for organizations to partner with us, and we would do organizational needs assessments, and then we would analyze the information and create tools and resources based on their recommendations. So that's what we did in year 1, and in year 2, our team spent the year creating the tools, and then having our partner organizations pilot the tools, and then evaluate the tools, and we would analyze that information so that we would make recommendations and changes to the tools. And year 3 has been on that analysis and revision of tools, and then disseminating the information out to organizations across Canada, which leads me here today. So what we ended up doing was we created 10 different essential skills tools, and I will talk to you, for those of you who come to the workshop after the break, I'll be introducing those tools to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Now to help us identify some of the common threads of all of the presentations this morning is Michael Herney once again, and he's going to provide us with those common threads and maybe not so common threads, but basically just to try and provide us a little bit of an idea as to a summative analysis of the work that was presented to you this morning.
Yeah, hi, thanks Doug, and thanks panelists. I guess what I'll do, I'm mindful of the time and that we're pushing up on the break, so I'm going to just make my comments really in two chunks. One is a little bit of a synthesis, and then the other will be just perhaps a brief example of actually how did a group of water and wastewater people end up co-sponsoring a provincial symposium, and how does it relate back to the things that you do in your communities that are so important. Okay, so one of the things that I heard loud and clear across all of the panelists is this idea of navigation, knowing where to go, knowing what to identify, knowing how to use it and how to use it in context, extremely important, and probably presents to you in terms of connecting learners to resources, or connecting, however you define the people you're working with, clients, newcomers, however that's defined, to resources. One of the other things that I heard really loud and clear is that no one used the word complexity, but there's a lot of complexity in our world today. And a lot of that complexity, there's a whole bunch of reasons for it. But what I heard across the panels was a lot of it is driven by diversity. Diversity of cultural assumptions, diversity of expectations in how our society here in Canada, or societies in Canada, function, because there's certainly sub-cultures and sub-societies, as well as diversity in the workplace, and this is just compounded, frankly, by the amount of specialization that we actually have, enabled in our workplaces and in our society to get things done. I really thought, when listening to some of the tools, being just the sort of summaries of them, is that there's this idea that we would all benefit from being more critically aware. And this is an idea in adult education. Some of you may be aware of the idea of critical reflection. That we would be we would benefit from being more critically aware and reflective of the assumptions underlying our daily lives, as well as the assumptions that we're making in the workplace. And I really like this idea of inclusion. And please correct me, sir, if I'm not restating this appropriately. Inclusion as a combination of diversity and engagement. I think what we also heard across the panelists is that we had a pretty good and have a pretty good foundation for essential skills, and they're necessary, but they may not be a complete set of definitions. And what we need to recognize is that essential skills, as we're talking about them in official policy circles, they reflect a snapshot of who we were and what we were doing at the time that research was done, and we live in an age, we always have lived in ages where things change over time. They're dynamic, except it seems that we live in an even more dynamic age today. So I think what I would simply also say is that the other thing I heard, be it the financial literacy, the ESL, or the Connect scales, and even especially Alice in terms of some Alberta specific stuff with the learning clicks, is that this reinforces what I said earlier in my opening comments about we're now living for the long run, the long view, longer lives, and a lot more emphasis on goal setting and reflecting about where are we at particular times in our lives, including relocating to other nation states in a lot of cases. And I just really cannot stress enough, what we're doing here today is not only about the utility of having skills for jobs, it's about skills for living and living well. Okay, So I just wanted to briefly say from kind of an employer's perspective, how are we planning to use today and why did we find this of interest when the NIAT showed up? Well, first of all, the NIAT's involved in our project advisory committee, and we're actually looking to work with the Community Learning Network on some pieces that are gaps in public safety as it relates to private wells and private wastewater for landowners, such as farmers and acreage owners and whatnot. So we're looking forward to strengthening that relationship in a substantive way. But for there's about 2,400 certified water and wastewater operators in the province, and they run about 600 systems. And we actually, very few of them people would actually be hired by an HR person. Very few of them will actually see somebody who's a workplace learning professional. They will typically be hired by a public works boss, be that a town foreman or a public works supervisor. And so what we're planning to do today is actually take and break down what we're learning today and actually do a 2-page feature in the Alberta Utility Operator in the spring, which actually goes out to 3,000 certified water and wastewater operators, and actually puts what we're learning today in terms that they can use. So the same way that you get the little product placement in your kits, we'll be taking what we learned today and interpreting that for the people who look after your drinking water and your wastewater. And you might say, as a reminder, well, why is this important? Well, it might seem quite obvious to you, but I guess with deference to my colleague from Ontario here, it's easy to pick on the people in Walkerton and the system in Walkerton, Ontario. The reality is, and I have this on good authority across the prairies, that there are Walkertons waiting to happen all over rural Canada. And so if you remember that 7 people were killed in Walkerton and 2,300 were seriously injured, with many having long-term chronic illness because of the E. coli 0157H7 contamination back about 12 years ago. This matters, and making sure that people have the skills and the tools to do their work and to do their work consistently well. That's why we're here today. That's how we're using what we're doing, and that's why it's important actually to each of you who will turn on the tap in this province today. Okay, thanks.
Great, thanks, Michael. And I have to use this to thank you for your distillation of the conversation that occurred this morning, and hopefully that's an encouragement for the flow of discussion. We are at 20 to 11, and we have a scheduled break for a half an hour now. Are we still going with the half an hour? Or are we going to cut that? 20 minutes. So you have 20 minutes, and we'll see you when we get back. And thanks.
Just one announcement before you head off to break. So when you come back, this room is going to look different because we're going to close the divider, and so this room will be A, and that side of the room will be B. So in terms of the session, in room A, we will have the skills projects presentation, and in room B, we'll have the LS presentation. So depending on which session you have signed up for, the entrance, each room will have its own entrance. So enjoy the break.